Greetings everyone, welcome to Advanced, and this game was played in Sinquefield Cup, but Sinquefield Cup 2014, and we have one of the absolute legends of 2014. I mean, it was the year of him, and we have the legend, the myth, we have Fabiano Caruana. He's also playing in 2025 in the Sinquefield Cup, but back then he was just a different kind of monster. So, without further ado, let's start with this game because this game is against Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces. So it's going to be very, very amazing. So d4 was played by Hikaru. We have d5, c4, c6, and just knight to f3. We go for the Slav defense, and we have knight to f6, knight bd2, bishop to b5, but just knight to h4, attacking the bishop. This is also the main line, bishop to e4. Now we play f3. Now you're gonna have to lose the bishop, but first e3. Now a nice developing move, and it's one of those lines where f3 is okay to be played. e6, g3. Well, I mean, this is just weakening it a bit too much, but I think if it works, it works. Hey, we have bishop to e7, a3, and now just knight bd7, c captures, and just going for this knight captures. You always want to eliminate that bishop in these lines because that bishop is a bit too strong, and you don't want that bishop to rest there the entire game. Most likely on a castle, and the game would be very, very great for that bishop there. So just eliminate it. Edge captures. Now just going for bishop to d3, e5, and now finally just castles, and we have queen to b3 now, putting some pressure on that pawn. Also, in some lines also on that pawn as well. Queen to c8 was played, just defending. Now we have knight to b1, e captures, and just going for this knight back to b8. I mean, the original square, you want to remaneuver it, and you want to try and get the knight to the square, maybe in some lines. We have knight to c3, knight to c6, bishop to e3, and now just going for queen to d7, rook a to d1. We have rook f to d8, rook f to e1, and the position is looking very, very good. I mean, for Hikaru there is not many issues, but he still has to figure out how to break through with this position because the center is really, really strong. I mean, and there is no easy way to target any of these pieces, and he has a weak king side. That's something that he has to keep in mind and always be cautious about, because if the rooks and the queen form some sort of loop here, then you have to understand if the king moves, you can get that rook there. The queen is already eyeing, the knight can jump into the game, the bishop will be very, very strong here, so it could get very, very tricky. Knight to e8 was played by Fabi. We have bishop to f2 by Hikaru, and just knight to c7, bishop back to f1, knight to bishop to f6, and just queen back to a2. So both players just playing waiting moves, trying to figure out what to do in this position. And finally we have a breakthrough, or not really a breakthrough, but finally just pushing the pawn to try and gain some initiative. We have g5, and now we have b4. So he's trying to push on the king side, while Fabi here is trying to destabilize the knight and push on the queen side. g6 now. I mean, you don't want that structure to make your king's life a living hell. Queen to d2, queen to g7, and now just b5. So that is actually in the air, but you cannot get the queen into the game as long as this bishop is doing a very fine job of defending everything. So you have to break through somehow, but it's still very difficult. And if these knights were on better squares, it would be absolutely amazing, but you have to understand, you don't get everything from the start. You have to actually try and get those knights into the game. So maybe a move like that could be useful, but again, even when that knight is there, it's just very, very difficult to understand what to do. Do you sacrifice? Do you maybe just wait for your opponent to make a mistake, like that, which Hikaru is never going to do? But again, you have to try and get the those knights to better square, but there is no square that exists on the board here. That's the problem. Knight to e7 was played. We have bishop to e3, and just knight to e6. So both knights are just just moved from there to there. We have bishop to h3, and just knight to f5. So finally getting that knight to f5, and now there is some targets that knight is looking for. So do you want to trade here and get get those pawns amazingly to those f5 and g5 squares? Absolutely not. But here in this position, Hikaru actually goes for it. He goes for bishop captures and g captures, and now you must be thinking that pawn is a little weak maybe in this position, so maybe you're just getting some sort of compensation for it, but that's not true. Actually, that's the issue in this position. That's not true. And the move you want to play in this position is actually, you want to try and go for knight to e2 and prepare a move like f4, because you cannot push f4 directly. You have to understand, this is clearly open. You opened up this because of the fact that you gave up the light squared bishop, and there could be some issues in this position. So it's very dangerous to push f4 in this position, but actually Hikaru goes for it, and here just comes g4. That's locked in, so you're never attacking on the king side, and you push some pawns on the queen side, but you didn't follow through with your plan. Now those rooks are joining in, and now there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. Queen to d3 was played, but now rook a to c8. We have rook a to c1, just opposing that rook, and we have rook to c4, but just knight to e2, and knight to e2 a little bit too late now. But after knight to c7, we have just the move that you want to play in this position. You have to be very much careful. I mean, black is better because black has found this amazing blockade, and these pieces are not here doing that very much. I mean, you have all of these pieces in like very constricted position, and you're not doing that very much. This is over advanced, you cannot push to defend that, so you're going to lose one of the pawns. So it's better yet if you take one of the pawns after going for rook captures, d captures, queen captures, knight captures on b5 is coming. But here you cannot even push d5, and that's the issue, because this knight captures and you just lost another pawn, and that's absolutely insane. So if you push a4, pushing the knight back, you play knight to d6, but here after queen to d3, is getting to e4. I mean, you can oppose that, but then you lose the pawn, because there's a not that then you lose the pawn, and there's just a triple attack on that pawn. Is this very very difficult position to play. And in Hikaru, I mean, Hikaru is not that defensive of a player, and he would hate to play such a position for sure. So after knight to c7, knight to c3 was played. I mean, you just went there, now you're getting it back for what have you gotten out of all of this? Just trying to defend that, and it's just not going to work out now. Here rook to c8 was played, just improving the position before you capture the pawn. But now h3 with the idea of trying to weaken the king side, and now so he can maybe push some pawns and attack on the queen side. But it's just a far outreach thought that, that's never going to come into action, because here after g captures, king to h2, knight caps on b5 is played. We have knight captures, queen captures, and king caps on h3. But all of this just weakens your king side further, and with the rooks here, it's just very very difficult. You don't want to do something like this, but I think that's a hopeless attempt. Queen to d7, king to g2, but now comes b5, and Fabi has gotten everything he wanted from the opening and the middle game, and now his position is absolutely spectacular. Now you understand why rook captures was such a good move, because now it's cemented. Now what are you going to do about that rook? You cannot do anything. There is no counterplay. You cannot push those pawns. You cannot get the rook into the game. You cannot attack king anyway, and all of this pressure on the c file with the queen getting into the game is just going to be too much. Rook to b1 was played, but a6 now, and we have rook b to c1, queen to e6, and now it's just worse and worse and worse. Bishop to f2 was tried, trying to not get any of those checks in the position. In later time, obviously we have rook caps on c1. Now rook captures the queen, but now it f captures, and now you have two pieces for the queen in a completely winning endgame. I mean, Fabi didn't have to actually give up the queen, but he still did. And now queen to e2 is the best move in this position, but it's very very difficult to identify why queen to e2 is the best move. If you go for attacking the queen right away, you have to understand queen captures is a draw, and now there is nothing you can do about this. Now it's a draw, because I don't think you can avoid the perpetuals in this position. So let's say after queen to e2, you play the best move, which is rook 8 to c6, now trying to defend that pawn. But here after queen to h5, the queen is infiltrating, and it's going to be very much difficult to do something, because this pawn push is coming. You're not doubled, you cannot attack the bishop right away. Maybe you can capture and get, but it's still two moves, and if you capture that, then there are some checks in the position, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to avoid the perpetual. So most likely it's going to end in a draw, but still very very tricky position. After f captures, we have g4 immediately by Hikaru, and this just unfortunately does not work, because if here after f captures, we have queen to e2, now going for attacking both of these pawns. But now there is a subtle defense, which is king to f7, getting out of that check that would have come after capturing, and also defending that backwards pawn. So not much to do here with the white pieces. Now even your upper queen, you don't have anything to do in this position. Queen to d3 was tried, but after rook 1 to c2, now you understand that that could be in the position anytime soon. Queen to h7 check was played, but here you had to actually not go back here. If you go back here, it's a draw. I mean, it's still a draw, because rook to c2 was not a good move. But here after king to e8, it's a draw, but you have to find the right set of moves, and the moves that starts with it, you can pause the video and try to find out the absolute best move in this position, so that you're able to draw this endgame against Fabi. But if you're not able to find this, you're just completely lost. So pause the video, have at it. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move, and the move is queen to g6 check. That's the only check in this position that can get you a draw, because here after king to e7, you play f5 now, and there is no capturing this now, because queen captures and you just completely lost. So here after e captures, now you play this queen caps on f5, bishop caps on d4, now threatening to pick that up, and after queen captures, then you're just completely winning. So you play queen to h7 check, king to d6, and queen to g6 check, king to e5, and now queen to g5 check. And what do you do in this position? If you dare to go forward, I mean, there's such a thing that pushing too much in a drawn position, and that's exactly what that would be, because if you play king to e4, you could be going into a mating net, because now you've given up a pawn with the check. You cannot go forward. If you go forward, then you're just getting mated. Here after queen caps on d4, king to e2, queen to e3 check, king to d1, and queen to e1 would be checkmate, because queen is covering this entire thing. You cannot go here because queen is guarding it and bishop is guarding the queen. So that that would be absolutely terrible way to actually lose this match. So it's always better, in this position to go king to d6 and maybe just settle for a perpetual in this position. But that was the best moves that you cannot find under time pressure. And yes, Hikaru was under a lot of time pressure, but still, if anyone can find those moves, it was Hikaru. But 2014 Fabi was an absolute beast, and with luck on his side in this position, king to e8 after this f5 was played. And same mistake we saw him do after g4. He pushed g4 a bit prematurely. Now he has pushed f4 prematurely, and now there is a winning sequence which starts with bishop caps on d4. Now you cannot defend. There is no perpetual in this position. Queen to g6 check was played now, but it's a bit too late. King to d8, and after queen caps on e6, we have rook caps on f2 with the check. King to g3, and now rook to c3 check. King moves, and now rook to g2 check. King to f4, rook to f2 check. King to g3, king to c7, and after queen to e7 check, we have king to b6. So you are actually escaping the perpetual. You have a pass pawn, but that's not going to last. Your king is a bit too weak, and the position is going to crumble in a few more moves. Queen to d8 check was played. King to c7, but after queen caps on d5, we have bishop to c5. But now just queen to d8, king to b7, f6. Now trying to push the pass pawn, but now just comes bishop caps on a3. There is no way you could push the pass pawn. If you push, just rook captures, and yeah, you're just completely lost. Queen to d5 check was played, but now king to b6, queen to d8, again pinning the rook, but now just bishop to c5. So the checks are very minimal. Rook to b7 blocking, queen to d8 check, king to a7, and after queen to d5, now just goes in a completely lock up situation, and there is nothing you can do. Maybe you can try and set up some sort of a fortress, but I mean, you have to understand, you need to have just one more piece. If you had one more piece, maybe you'd be able to push through and break this fortress, but there is nothing you can do. You have an extra rook now, you can move that, and you cannot even push the pawn. Rook to c7 was played, but after king to g6, b4 was played, and here after queen to e6, we have bishop to d4. And it was on this move, on move 67, that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, and Fabi got the spectacular victory in round 5. He has 5 out of 5, and he is an absolute beast. And with 2 matches more, actually 5 more rounds remaining, he is 5 out of 5 at the top of the leaderboard in 2014 and absolutely crushing everyone. So yeah.